This is Open Mic Life. Let's go! Welcome to this week's episode. We have a very special guest coming. Welcome back to today's episode. I'm excited to have Sam Steen with me, RTL Today's radio host and head of programming, for a deep dive into the enduring power of radio as a classic media source. In a world filled with media, Sam explains what it takes to keep radio relevant and engaging, especially for Luxembourg's international community. We discuss the careful thought and planning that go into programming a station where every listener can find a piece of home, feel connected, and stay informed. Sam also shares valuable advice for anyone looking to launch their own media platform or podcast. He offers insights into building genuine chemistry with your audience, tips on standing out in a crowded media landscape, a must-hear for any aspiring creator. But first, I have an exciting update. Open Mic Life is now on YouTube, with full transcripts available. I'm dedicated to making each episode better, and your support and feedback are invaluable, so please keep it coming. Now, let's tune into today's conversation with Sam. Enjoy! Welcome, Sam. Welcome.
Hi.
You are host of the Sam Steen Show on Today RTL.
That's right.
Starting at 6 a.m., you said?
Exactly.
Until 10, so you just finished recording, actually.
Just came off the air, yeah, exactly. So good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for agreeing, and I'm very excited to be recording with such a seasoned professional, so I think I'm going to learn a lot. How was your episode today? What did you talk about?
It was nice. So the show is, it's a daily show, like I said, between 6 and 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's music and light entertainment and informational show, I guess. So we've got news and music news, entertainment news, but also people from the community in Luxembourg or musicians and artists either based here or visiting bands if they're coming from, big international bands or something like that. We try to feature them on the show. So this morning, for example, we're just at the start of October, we had Think Pink, which are a fantastic charity and organisation helping women with cancer and informing people and teaching people who are living with or working through cancer in Luxembourg. And so they were in talking about, because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, and also they've got a big running event taking place at the weekend. So that's what we had in today. Tomorrow it's another group, it's a band that we've got in. It's different every day.
That sounds really nice, and it's great that you can mix both entertainment and important topics that are really relevant for everybody.
Yeah, it's funny. Radios and morning radio especially is really like that. It can jump from one extreme to the other. You've got silly games, and then 5 minutes later a quite serious interview, and then a song that people like, and then something else. So it's quite dynamic.
Exactly, and I think we're going to get a little bit deeper, especially talking about radio, the essence of it as a media source. But before we do that, can you tell us a bit about how you got to the life behind the microphone? What was your path? What did you study? How did you get inspired to get into radio?
Oh, right. How far back do you want me to go?
As far as you want.
Okay. I have a strong memory when I was about 8 years old of really, really falling in love with radio. I had this little cheap battery-powered radio that I got from a pound shop that I had in my room, and that I used to turn on at night and in the mornings as well, and listen to these shows and hear these great songs that I started to love, pop music and rock music, and getting to know the hosts. I just started loving the medium and presenting in general. I always loved on TV shows and TV channels, the bits between the programs when the guests, when the presenters would be there and introducing, and they'd play games, and I was like, they look like they're having so much fun. I want to do that for a job. So that was pretty much all I wanted to do from a very young age. And then it's funny, as for a university course, I wanted to do radio, I wanted to do some kind of broadcasting thing, but I'd also heard that doing something more general in humanities or something like that could be maybe more beneficial if you could do radio at the same time. And then the course I ended up doing was European Studies, because two of my favourite radio hosts had done that course in the college that I went to, and the university had a college radio station. Unfortunately, the radio station shut down the year before I started.
Oh, no.
So I was like, no. But I then afterwards went on and did a course just for a year in radio production and broadcasting. And then that, as part of that, I had to do some work experience, and that brought me to Luxembourg. There's a radio station here, people probably know it, Radio Ara. And I came and did a couple of weeks working there. They asked me to come back in the summer. I came back for the summer, and then a couple of months later a show opened up, and they asked me if I wanted to come back and do that. And I was just sort of kicking around in Ireland, not doing anything in particular. So I said, sure, we'll come, try it for a year, maybe get some experience. And then my plan was to go back to Ireland and with that experience and maybe get somewhere at a station there. And that was 14 years ago. So here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Here to stay, I hope.
Very much so at this stage. Yeah.
Very nice. And it does sound like you did have a specific path in mind and you followed directions by people that you admired. So to say, so this is a very nice way to approach something that you want to do. And then, as you said, this was 14 years ago, and now you have your own show, which from my point of view as a radio listener is prime time, 6 to 10, when people get up, go to work. And you said yourself that you have a variety of different topics every day. The inspiration behind this podcast was creating great conversation. Is there a specific conversation that comes to mind when I say great conversation in your show that really influenced the way you do your job or that touched you in a way?
That I've had?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think there are different conversations that you have that maybe you don't realize sort of how important they are. I remember before I was here at RTL during COVID, for example, I was still at Aura. I was doing the same time slot actually, and you know, we were all stuck inside. We couldn't go anywhere, and we were still doing the show, and everyone listening couldn't leave the house. Everyone was stuck in, and just sort of playing games. And we did a scavenger hunt which was really good fun. We we'd give people clues or instructions, and then they'd have to run around their house and get a picture of the thing that they found or the task that we got them to complete and send it in. And it was really good fun, but also created a real sense of sort of community. And, you know, I'd been doing the show for a very long time, but that really felt important. You know, it was really good that we were able to do that, and was sort of the reason why I got into radio in the first place. You know, it's I guess we'll talk about this later, but the thing I love about radio is that sense of community and the connection, the immediate connection that you get with the listeners and between the hosts and the listeners and the guests, in a way that like TV is sort of showbiz, whereas radio and podcasts are, you know, because you're spending so much time with those people, it's a bit more personal. You kind of get to know the person in a more realistic sense, I think.
I agree. I completely agree. And to me, I would say that I see radio as one of the media sources that takes away the vanity out of media. It takes away the trends out of it. So it's a more steady media that I see. It's something that has existed for longer than TV, and everybody listens to radio in some way or form at some point of the day. So do you see this as one of the reasons why I wanted to do radio? Because it's such a steady type of media. 100%,
yeah. There's, I suppose the thing, that was a conversation or a period of my career that kind of influenced how I went on with things. I remember very clearly a show I listened to when I was probably 12 or 13, maybe 14, 15, around that age. And, you know, at that age, you know, everyone's sort of wondering about who they are and their place in life, and school is hard and you don't know what you want to do, and people are mean, and, you know, you're unhappy with stuff. And there was a show by an Irish radio presenter who's still working now. His name is Ricochet. And he used to do a 1-hour show at that time, and it was really good fun. It was sort of fun music, and people would text in with their jokes and what was going on and stories, and people could send in, at the time people would call in and leave messages on an answering machine, and they'd be saying funny stuff, and he'd play that out. It was called 15 Seconds of Fame was the feature. And it built this real community around the show. Like, people were really into it. They would tell jokes. I know I had friends that we would talk about the show last night. Oh, did you hear that thing on Rick's show or whatever? And then someone texted in or sent a message in, I guess. I guess they text in. Someone sent a message into the show anyway saying, you know, I'm having a really hard time. I'm unhappy with, I don't have I don't feel like I've got a lot of friends in school. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I feel a real sense of comradeship with the other listeners of your show, and I love the hour a day listening to your show, and what that, you know, that means so much to me. And I really feel like there's people out there who are like me that, you know, that would get me, that, you know, it gives me this kind of hope. And I remember Rick, the host, saying, don't worry about now, you know, when you're in school, and the people who, these people are people you're stuck with because you live near them and you have to go to the same school, and, you know, they might not get you, but you'll go out there and you'll go to college and you'll find people with similar interests, and you'll find your tribe and the people who are right for you. And this thing that you're going through now, it's just now. It gets better. You'll go out there, you'll find the people who are meant for you, and you'll find your path. And I remember thinking, God, that's so, like, like, this is on national radio, and this person's having this sort of connection. And, like, I remember so clearly, and it stuck with me now, just the importance of hearing that from somebody, and the sort of personal connection that this person had, and this reassuring message that this host was able to give. And I thought, that's really cool. That's what the medium should be about. You know, that it's that it is important to people, you know what I mean? And while it might seem like silly games and messing around and, you know, eating hot chips that are too hot to eat and doing dumb things, that actually just being there is important. And I gotta say, it goes both ways. You know, the people on air get that as well. You know, we're people who like to hear from people and stay in touch with the listeners, and you know, it's a fun job to have for many reasons.
And it does really, you think, because you yourself said about your show how you switch between different topics. I view being present in the media, having a media presence, also as a responsibility, because you don't know how you touch somebody who is listening to you, but it does create a community. And I think if you do something with passion, it can very well translate to the listener, and they can in some way relate to you, or they can open up. So to be able to create a space where people can tune in, feel heard, also listen to others is really special.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a special medium, really, and podcasts are just opening this up to more and more people, you know, as you know yourself.
This really brings me to my next question, because I wanted to ask you, how would you draw the parallel between TV and streaming and radio and podcasting?
Well, it's interesting because at Today Radio, we're not just radio, we're audio visual. So we've got 4 cameras in our studio streaming everything live while we're there. I have sort of mixed feelings about it. I think it's fun, and I know people enjoy watching along, and I myself watch as much content from podcasts as I listen to. Maybe a little less. I listen more than I watch probably, but I do watch, you know, the video streams of podcasts. And I know it's important, and I know that's the way media is. I wonder, I guess the disquiet I feel about it is, I wonder, are people who would be less inclined to go in front of camera,
Definitely,
are they comfortable with it? You know, and, you know, people talked about video killed the radio star. You know, the great thing about radio always was that you're just alone in a room. You know, how many people do we know that are really funny? Like, we've all got friends who are really funny and really good fun and knowledgeable and know loads of stuff, but that's on a one-on-one basis, you know? And whereas put them in a room or with lots of people and they just clam up and go quiet. Well, radio, I think, traditionally was a place for those people, because you can just be in a quiet room, you're speaking into a mic with a light on, and all of that personality can come out because there's no one watching, really. And I wonder if the cameras that go along with the medium now are going to take those people out of the industry, and if we're just going to be left with a whole pile of extroverts.
I hope not, because I think this is really one of the things that make radio different and differentiated from today's world of media, which is insane in terms of how much content there is, how everybody can be out there, how a dance can go viral and then you're selling products. I think this is a very unnatural way to receive content, and radio and podcasting still in a way give space for people like this. I have gotten the question a lot if I want to make this awesome with a visual, with camera.
Right.
And I really make a point, especially during the first few seasons, to not do it because I want the conversation. And I have definitely seen what you're saying, that people sometimes are completely different on camera.
Yeah.
Also the fact that there is some podcasts that I listen to, but they also have a visual. I receive what they're doing and what they're saying in a completely different way. I've done it before where I watch the interview and then I just listen to it. You hear it in a different way. You pay attention to different things. Absolutely. I think.
So it is interesting. You know, it's just a different medium, right?
Definitely.
So we'll see how it goes. I mean, maybe we just get used to it. To be honest, when the cameras are on in the studio, we forget about it. I completely forget that they're on. Yeah. But that's because they're high up on the wall. You know what I mean? Exactly. And also it's a music show, so there's music playing in between them. And you know, it's not like a podcast intensity where we're just, you know, we're
talking to each other.
Exactly. Or if there were cameras in here, that there'd be one in front of me and one in front of you. You know, it's a different kind of way. But I guess it's just the way it is.
We were talking before that your show is live. So something that I've always been interested in asking somebody is, has there ever been a moment when you're doing a show and breaking news come in where you have to interrupt?
Yes. Trying to think, has there been major news? That's a good question. I wasn't on air during, for example, like 9/11 or any of those kind of... We launched actually the day, just as Russia went into Ukraine. We went on air as Today Radio, which was interesting because obviously, you know, when you launch...
On that day you launched?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, obviously you want, when you launch a radio station, to be like, we're here, we're fun, and it's a big new thing that's going to be fun and exciting with lots of games and giveaways and, you know, join us for a jaunty good time. Also, there's war in Europe. So it was a bit, you know, trying to temper that.
Very tricky to play.
Yeah, exactly. So as we spoke about, trying to balance that quite very serious subject matter with a fun atmosphere. I guess luckily we also, you know, in our house here at RTL, there's Today Radio, and then there's also RTL Today, so we have a news side that if people want to get all of the serious stuff, it's on there as well. But no, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm sure there's been some celebrity deaths. We've had a lot going on since we launched, you know. We're not even 3 yet, and we've had obviously Ukraine, there's Gaza, there's the Queen died in the UK, there's been you know, tons of things happening globally.
These things usually get announced in the morning, if I'm not mistaken.
It's true, yeah. The newsreader on our show, Sasha, she has broken, or at least reported on some major historic events in a very short period of time. But it's just the nature of the beast, I guess. Before
I asked you about the conversation that really moved you, I was wondering also in terms of advice for me maybe, and other listeners who are doing the same. It's really nice when the conversation is flowing and when it's great. But especially with the live show, how do you keep going when you're just not getting what you need from the interviewee?
It is hard. It depends what you're trying to make at the end of it, right? I mean, for a podcast, you've got either unlimited time or an hour or however long you want to run the podcast for. That's fine. For a radio segment, you've got under 10 minutes probably that you want to fill sometimes, and even like our interviews would be generally around about 8 minutes when we've got people in studio. So you're kind of, what are you here to talk about? When is the thing that you're talking about going to be happening? How can people take part in this thing that you're talking about? And give us a story about something. Do you want to play a quick game or something? Blah blah blah. It's pretty straightforward for those kinds of things on a morning radio station. It's not an in-depth conversation that you're having. And if you are having a kind of a more in-depth conversation, often you're cutting it right on down. So in the edit, you can make these things sound a little bit more dynamic. You know, if somebody's giving you short answers, you can cut in a bit of music in between their answers or something like that, just to make it not quite sound quite so difficult. It depends. Like, some people can be quite guarded.
Yeah.
But I think with podcasts, you sometimes have the time to sort of ease them into the conversation. And having a conversation, I think, that is open in this way, you know, without set questions, makes that a little bit easier. It's something that sure will have a couple of questions that we want to ask, or you know, sometimes we have questions that fit a certain feature that we have that we want to, you know, we want to get an answer for. But in general, we'll sort of just say, hey, how's it going? Where are you right now? Oh, what's it like there? And just get them into a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I did advice, again, from a radio host that I admire in Ireland. He said, make all your notes, do all your prep, and then don't use any of it.
Mm-hmm. In most of my interviews, I have seen a moment where something clicks for the person and they start really enjoying the moment. So I think it's a very good advice. And at the end of the day, I think this is one of the parts that are the beauty of this, that you're talking to a person.
Right.
And I do believe that you can talk to everybody about something. You have something in common or something to learn from literally everyone. So just to give them the space really helps you also.
For sure. I think that's something that I'd often be asked, you know, do you ever get nervous when you're interviewing bands, or, you know, if you've got somebody famous, it's like, when you've done it enough time, you realise that everyone is just a person.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes, sure, they might be busy or fed up because they've done 14 interviews already before they get to you. Mm-hmm. But in general, people are just people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you can meet them at that point, then you can have a conversation. Whereas if you kind of go in, you know, I think with set questions and you're barely listening to their answers, then they'll switch out because you're not engaged. So why should they be?
Very good point. When you work in radio, you wear a lot of hats, and you're also head of programming.
Yeah.
So what does this entail?
It's essentially just it's making sure that all of the shows are in the right place, but also taking pitches for shows and overseeing what goes out on air and what programs we commission and have on the air. You know, we try to have a wide range of programs. It is mostly a music station, but we do have talk shows, and we do feature some podcasts on the air as well. And then, and we try to give exposure and time to different genres of music and also music made in Luxembourg. We think that's really important as well. So while we have general music shows, like my show, for example, is a morning show, so that would feature, because we have a slightly more alternative rocky sound, I guess that would be the main basis of it. But because it's a morning show, you've got kids listening, going to school, you want to play some pop music as well.
Yes, of course.
And you got to play the classic hits that people want to hear as they're driving in. So it's a quite of a mix of shows. Stephen Lowe, who I mentioned earlier, has a show called New Noise, which is really new music, some of it unreleased, and he does that for an hour. So if people want to discover stuff, that's a great place for that. Then there's the afternoon session, which is kind of, again, more of a chilled out alternative show, again featuring a lot of classic tracks. And then there's the evening drive time show, which again, a lot of songs that people will know, old, new, but always with a slightly sort of alternative bent, while playing some pop music that's out right now as well. And then there are more kind of genre specific shows. So there's Louder, which is a metal show. There's In Tune, which is the show that we do in collaboration with the Philharmonie, so that's classical music and features the stuff that's on there. We have the DB3 show, which is all about music made in Luxembourg, so it's 2 hours dedicated to Luxembourgish music. And then I don't want to forget everyone's show. I mean, there's The Hangover, which is a fun show on a Sunday morning. There's the Pumping on Your Stereo, which is a midday show, which is kind of, or a daytime late afternoon show, which is kind of fun upbeat tunes to get you through the afternoon. And then there's the talk shows. We have sports shows, the Lisa Burke show, which is kind of society and also politics and science and all different kinds of subjects. And without going, you know, it's a varied program, and you know, we're pretty proud of it because we run shows now from 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night.
That's a long time
all day
to
long.
fill. Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, it's a big thing. You know, from when I started in radio in Luxembourg, it was 8 hours. It was the most English language radio that you get in Luxembourg. And to go from there now with Today Radio from 6 until 10 p.m, that you can turn on the radio and get programming made in Luxembourg that is local, talking about stuff that's happening in Luxembourg and the events and bands and artists and people doing things in the Grand Duchy. To have that all day long in English is a pretty cool thing to be a part of, and something I'm proud of.
It's definitely something to be proud of, because you really are making the international people of Luxembourg feel like part of the community. Because how many times has it happened that you're somewhere and you randomly meet Luxembourgish people who talk about something which is obvious, because how would you not know this? But you are just not in touch with this part of society because you're not integrated in a way where you find out things from word to mouth. And when you have such a long airtime for the international community, really make them part of the Luxembourgish community.
Yeah, that's a really important and has been a very important part of the whole project since we started. You know, we have Dave Burrows and the DB3 show, which, as I said, is about music that's all from Luxembourg, and that show itself has built a community around it because the people are delighted to have their show featured on the radio, so they listen in, and we've gotten feedback from bands who, having heard interviews with producers and other artists, have collaborated or discovered each other through that show, which is really cool. The Let's Talk Sports show was a really important one for us because we, basically, I used to live in Beggan, and I used to go and watch Beggan Football Club, Avenue Beggan, and it was a great way into the community as somebody not from Luxembourg to go and be with Luxembourgers who were delighted to have someone from outside, and they've got a big international following, that club. I say people from the international community go watch them is what I mean. And I was always thinking, God, sport is such a great way for people to be involved in their community. You know, every single village has a football team. Yeah. So following this team, I went to every village around the country watching them away. And it was a great way, you know, Luxembourg is so small, you're never more than 45 minutes away from an away game. Yeah. You know, so you can go every week, pay, I think it was €7 at the time to go into the match, €2, €3 beer, have a hot dog, a lovely way to spend a Saturday or Sunday morning. And there are so many...
Talk to somebody next to you.
Exactly. Talk to somebody, get to know Luxembourg, the villages, the people who are there, you know, to be part of the community. And that was just the football. And the guys at Let's Talk Sport have reached out and made connections with so many different sports and organisations all over the country. And I've gone out to see them and I've had them on the show. And, you know, being involved in sport, because everybody likes doing something active. So whether it's a running team or if you play tennis and you want to be in your tennis club, your local tennis club or whatever, you know, there's a way into your community through that. And we wanted to kind of show that off a bit through that show. And that's something that I think has spread throughout all of the shows, really. Like I said, we Think Pink in today. We get people from different organisations in on all of the different shows, trying to be a part of Luxembourg, because while we are in English, we all know that the English language is becoming more and more part of living in Luxembourg. And we want to be able to show, like you said, all of the things that people are missing, they're happening, and you can be a part of it too.
Going back to the programming of it and the psychology behind what you play in the morning, what you play at noon, then the afternoon mellow. So I think there is psychology behind it, and this is something I suppose you studied.
Well, yes and no, but it's also experience, I think, you know, and also we're fans of radio ourselves, and we're fans of the medium, you know, and you kind of, we try to get a good balance. One thing, you know, that was, I think, missing from the market before Today Radio came along, in English anyway, was consistency and knowing what you were going to get at a certain time in the English language media. And, you know, you know, you sometimes you might get a metal is a, you know, there's a lot of great metal music out there, but it's perhaps not the right thing to listen to at 2:00 in the day for a general audience. Or, you know, world music, which might be, you know, full of merit and absolutely of its place. But for a radio station, if people are sitting in their car, it might not be the most attractive thing to hear. So, yeah, we think a lot about where the shows should be, and that's fluid. It changes over time. You know, we something else fits better, we'll give it a run, and then we'll move things around. But in general, we try to keep a consistent playlist and schedule throughout the day for the almost 3 years that we've been running. That's
really nice, and it also makes me think of the fact that having something consistent makes you feel at ease. It makes you feel at home. It makes you have your own path. This is something that I think the Luxembourgish community of internationals often lacks. And for example, I used to live in a colocation, like a shared house, like a lot of people who come to Luxembourg for the first time. It was amazing and a great way to start because I had my little community there, especially during COVID. But some of the most heartbreaking things were when somebody was moving out. And in the beginning, you're like, oh yeah, of course, you know, they move on. then this person comes, then this person moves out. At the end of the day, it is people who are coming and going out of your life. And this is one of the hardest things about living in Luxembourg, because you meet someone and then 3 years later they move back to their own country or they move on to somewhere else. To have consistency in the community, to find people through sports, through music, and connect with them, people who are staying here, really makes life nicer and easier.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's it's happened to us a few times that we've had entire friend groups just vanish.
Exactly.
For those of us who are staying here long term, it's just a part of life in Luxembourg, I think.
Exactly.
I've been lucky enough. I have 2 kids now, so what happens when you have kids is you become friends with the kids' parents.
Yeah.
But we're lucky enough that we're very good friends with some of our neighbours who have kids the same age, and that's been really good because we're all here now, right? Yeah. we're all here with our kids. Yeah, which is good. But you're right, having that kind of touchstone is good. It's important. And we still get texts and messages from people who've left who used to listen to us but enjoyed the show and enjoyed how it was going so much that even when they left Luxembourg they continued to listen to us and make us a part of their day, which is really nice and a real compliment.
And it also brings a little bit back of nostalgia from a different moment of life that you had.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really sweet and really nice. It really gives you the sense of how your audience appreciates you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how do you keep the pulse of your audience? Because, for example, I think there is something to say about that it's a different way of getting feedback than different media. So I know that there is now this one show, the host gives the option of 2 songs. Somebody calls in and the song with the most out of 5 gets played. Mm-hmm. Is this a way where you try to listen to the audience, or what is the way where you accept the statistics, of course, where you touch base? What do they want to listen to more?
I think we all, as hosts, try to communicate honestly with our listeners. We speak naturally and openly to them. We also respond directly via WhatsApp when they text in and communicate with us on the show. And try not. I don't know if you need to bleep this. Try not to bullshit them. You know what I mean? If there's something that we feel about something, we'll say it. If there's a song we really like, we're going, this is great, and somebody might go, I don't like it. Well, we'll read out your message saying you don't like it. Yeah. But I think it's really good. Maybe give it another go. Or if there's something that's really bad, I've always thought it was best not to go, oh, that's that song. It's pretty good. We'll hear that later. I think it's always been more refreshing to hear as a listener, whenever I've heard it, to say, that was terrible. I'm not going to play that again. And that's, yes. I'm not a fan of that. Tell me why I should like that, because I just don't. And then you're opening up a conversation that's kind of honest, and at least people know that you like the music that you're playing. And like you mentioned earlier, when people are passionate or when people enjoy something, that's infectious and people can appreciate it. Even if they don't like the song themselves, they might go, oh, there's somebody who really likes it. They really like it. I can give them that time to enjoy the music that they like. Whereas if it's something that's, if they're playing stuff, if you're playing something that's rubbish and pretending that you like it and you don't really like it, and the person who's listening doesn't like it, then nobody's happy.
Nobody.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you play something that's rubbish and go, that was crap, then they'll laugh and go, it was, wasn't it? And then they're on board with you. You know what I mean? Exactly. And then it's you're building a connection in that way as well. It's just about honesty, I think. And when you have that dialogue and when you're being honest with people, then you can have an open conversation about what's working and what's not. Yeah, I've gotten messages from people who've said, I'm not sure about this feature. Or the way things are going, it's not as there's something up with the show at the moment. Can you have you noticed it or whatever? And open feedback from people, and I think that's only something you get by building a relationship over time with people, which has been good.
Honesty is the most important thing. I think it's the most important thing in any relationship that you have, especially with your listeners. And I think people can really, really hear very fast if you're bullshitting. And also the fact that honesty is one of the more difficult things to preserve when you are trying to become bigger and you're trying to have, sponsors, you're trying to get airtime for people to like you, that you have to think or believe certain things. What would you say to people who are starting out in any type of media and are struggling to find the balance between being honest with their audience, still wanting to make it in some kind of a way, but being true to themselves?
I think people are very media savvy now. You know, we consume an enormous amount of media, and people know how it works. You know, people know that advertising drives the production of anything. You know, if the people have to make money in order to keep something going. You know, people can do things for passion for a certain amount of time, but if someone, you know, if something is a commercial venture, then something has to pay for that. So people understand ads, and they understand sometimes that you know, you might have an ad read. I don't know if you do them on your podcast or not. Not yet. Advertising available if people want to sponsor. Send an email to.
Yes, I will give my email.
Good, send an email at the end. Perfect. But people understand, you know, like at the start of a podcast that you might listen to that, oh, this episode is brought to you by XYZ.
Yeah.
And, you know, check out this website for the best deals, blah, 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 blah. And now on with the show. People are accepting of that kind of thing, I think. What's changing, I think, is, you know, for a while, I think people were sort of promoting things without making it obvious that it was an advertisement, or that it was a sponsored element of the show. Here's this thing that's really great, and blah 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 blah, without and pretending as though it's a real feeling. Yeah. I think it's better just to be upfront. This is an ad. Without ads, we can't do this. Bear with me for 30 seconds while I tell you about this thing. You might like it. We've tried it. And now on with the show. I think that's just the best way to do it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Before we wrap up, dream guest for the show and dream segment for the radio.
I really want to do more actors. I want to speak to, for some reason, I haven't interviewed a lot of actors and movie people. And I think what I've done over a lot in my time, musicians and bands, and I've always been fascinated by the music industry and music as a business, and the kind of relationship between business and art, and why somebody, you know, at what point does making money out of this thing, like when does making art go from letting all of your emotions out through song become creating a product to sell? And I find that a really fascinating thing, and probably unfortunately a lot of my interviews with bands end up coming back to that at some point, because I'm like, you're doing this, tell me about it. I want more information about the relationship between business and music. And movies are the same, I think. Or are they? I don't know yet, because I haven't had the conversations with people. You know, I want to know about actors and that process, and how that works. I think Jared Leto, maybe. I don't know how good an interviewee he would be. I think he can be either a bit mad or also a bit guarded in terms of what he says. But I think
it depends on which segment of the day you
right, exactly. You know, I'd love to chat to him, because I think, you know, he's a great actor. He's an incredible performer. I'd love to know, like, at what point, what is performance and what is real, you know? And like the show, if you've ever seen 30 Seconds to Mars, the artist, but a huge performance and a big show, but totally choreographed and like more like a stage production than a gig, if you know what I mean. And I'd love to know like where actor ends, and like is he acting as a rock star, or
that's a
you know,
point,
or all of these things. I don't know what kind of answers you get, but I think if you got a really honest conversation with him, I think it could be fascinating.
I agree.
Dream segment.
Yeah, new segment that you would like to.
I want to give away a house or a car or something mad.
Oh, that's cool.
Something.
You get a car. You get
Oprah style, you know.
Perfect. So once you start this, please invite me.
I will, absolutely. Yeah.
And I will be happy if you come back on the show and give us an update. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for having me. It was lovely.
I'm very happy, and see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. See you next week on Open Mic Live.